Alright, we are finally back on this poacher build. I know it's been way too long, but I've been getting way behind on all my projects. You would think that since I'm at home more than anywhere else, I'd be able to get a lot more done. But anyways, so where we left off last time, and I just put the paper towel in there to protect the paint, but where we left off last time, I started to assemble all this and I realized that some of the surfaces needed to be painted better. So I repainted some of it and then assembled it. And again, it's just, you can see how it goes together here. And I showed you last video how it goes together. And then this piece here went on with solvent and copious amounts of CA because I do not want that coming apart. But this is in the plain configuration, like that. And it's not unfolding perfectly flat. There's a little bit of an angle to it that I don't like. I think I can resolve that simply by sanding that surface down here a little bit. When it's in the robot walking mode, these are folded down. It's a little tight, but it'll go like that. And then this all folds up like that, and this can come out, and that might hit on something to keep it upright, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what holds it up just yet. Hopefully there's something, because right now that would just fall back, and don't really want it to do that. But there is that part of it done, and we are ready to move on. All right, now also last video, we talked about these pieces already, so those are good to go, and they slide into this piece, which, as you can see, is only primered, and I just primered that a few hours ago, so I want to give it the rest of the day to set up and dry. Then I'll fine sand it, and then I'll paint it, and the wings are in the process of getting filled and painted. So, since I'm not quite ready for this yet, let's skip ahead and put a few other pieces together. On step 39 right here, there's these two pieces in the kit. They're metal. I printed them out of ABS. Right now it's just got some primer on it. And those print in two pieces, and that way you get a nicer finish. And you can see the seam here, so just print the two pieces and bond them together. And again, after I paint those brown, those will be ready to go. So again, not quite ready for those, but you'll need to get those glued together. And also, we need to look at these pieces here. Now, I had to do this in about 3 or 4 different pieces. Again, step 40, parts 117 and 118. Each one of those, 117, 118, each one of those will print in 4 pieces, and here's what it looks like all assembled. And let's go ahead and I'll show you how to make these. So you'll need this piece, prints on the bed just like that. And this piece, again, prints on the bed just like that. And that piece, again, flat side down. And same with that one. So to assemble these, this one will just bond on to that side like that. And then that one, it's a little tight. We'll need to trim that up just a little bit. Like that. Good fit. For large surfaces like this, I started using a syringe. It's a little overkill, but works nice. Make sure it goes on the right way. And that's that. I will probably just hand brush paint those. I'll probably just do all of that like a gray or aluminum color, and then just hand brush the wires or whatever those are with different colors, just to give some, you know, just get a different color into the model. So those are now ready to go. As soon as we're ready for that stuff, I'll just put those off to the side for now. So back to over here. I'm going to have to wait till tomorrow to do the rest of this, so I'll see you then. All right, so I decided to go ahead and put LEDs in here. So one here. What I did was I just made up a bunch of these little leads. So I got the LED, 2 wires soldered to it, heat shrunk, and I have 2 per wing. Those are for landing lights, and then these right up here. So when he's in a robot mode, those are kind of sticking out over his shoulders like spotlights or something. And I have, as you can see, 2 switches. One for these lights. Actually, that's this one for those lights. And this one will be for the landing lights and the wings. Just using 2 button cell batteries in series. So I'm just putting 3 volts to the system. Little circuit board here. This is just like, you know, junction stuff. That way I'm not twisting all the wires together, and just thought it'd be a little bit cleaner way to do it. Now I did kind of screw up. Let me show you something here. If we take a look at one of the wings, so here's the wing painted. Landing lights will go here. And again, these wires were put in when I put the wing halves together, so I could just use that to pull it through. But if we take a look at how this goes on, that one will go here, like that. And of course, in the robot mode, it swings all the way over like that, and I think you might be able to see the problem here. That switch is in the way. So if I leave it like that, that will only be able to go that much. And it needs to go that much. So I need to relocate those switches. So what I want to do then, let me show you the top cover that goes here. So this, yeah, that was slick. This cover goes right there, and right now those switches stick out right there. I'm going to have to move them to right here. I was thinking about here, but this thing goes there. So even if I put them here, they would still hit the wings. They need to be right here. That's really about the only place that I can put them. Now just to talk about a few other things with this piece. And I'll probably just put a piece of square over top of that, paint it gray or black or something, and that'll just become some extra detail is all. That's just tape right there to mark where I want to cut the new switch holes. So of course that'll put the 2 switches here, which should be fine. That'll work. What else? Oh yeah, to attach this, I mean obviously I don't want to just glue it because I need to be able to replace the batteries. So I took some 440 nuts, and they are fiber lock nuts. Those are just these, and 440 fiber lock nuts, and some 440 screws, cap head screws. And what I did is I just put the nut over the hole, put my soldering iron on it until it melted into the post, and I just put it down far enough until the plastic started to melt over the edge. So one here, and then one here and here. Now originally, the kit did not have screw holes here, so I drilled those in and just counterbored a tiny bit for the screws. And of course, those just go straight through. Again, if you're not adding any electrical, you could just put that on and glue it down and be done with it. But now I'll have 2 screws here and 2 screws here, so it'll be easy enough to replace the batteries. So let me move those switches to here and put the lights in the wings, and then we can put the wings on, put that on, and then this part will be done. We can move on to the next step. One other thing before I move on. The LEDs that I got, and you can consider this a public service announcement. I bought this kit on eBay. This was probably, I don't know, $4 or $5 at the most, maybe. I really don't remember. I just got it because I thought it'd be nice just to have a box of LEDs, and I've been using the little clear ones from here. Problem is, since these were so cheap, I had to go through 10 of them to get 6 that worked. So far, my experience with this is almost half of these, almost 50%, are no good. And the problem is, the thing that really ticked me off was I tested them before I wired them up, and they worked fine. I soldered the wires on it, tested it, they worked fine. Then I put the heat shrink on it, and then not so much, they didn't work. So it's almost like just you stress out the leads a little bit too much and they just break inside. I don't know if the tolerances were off. Maybe these failed the quality control check at the factory, so they just kicked them in the bin to sell to schmucks like me. I don't know, but so far, almost half of these, 40%, are no good. So, yeah, you get what you pay for. I think the case here is going to be worth more than all of those LEDs together. But I did find 6 that work and continue to work. As you can see here, those still work. Obviously, when I put the others into the wings, once I pull them through, I'll test them. Once I put the wing on and wire them up, I'll test them. And I'm not going to bond, I'm not going to put the lens over top of that until it's fully assembled and tested and they still work. But it would not surprise me if one of these fails, after it's all installed. But we'll see. So anyways, like I said, let me get the switches moved and the LEDs in the wings here, and then we'll keep on going after that. Go to the next step. So see you in a bit. Okay, so let's take a look what we have so far. As you can see, the wings are on. Now let me show you what's going on here. What I did, see, I'm kind of concerned about this surface, that surface right here scratching the paint. So for now, I'm just kind of protecting it with the paper towel there. But final fix for that is I put a zip tie right around here, and the head of the zip tie will ride on either side of that, and that will keep that off of that surface. That kind of spaces it up a little bit. And so now this can go on like that. And I pressed in, again with a soldering iron, another 440 fiber lock nut, and then I turned down, well, I didn't turn them, I just cut them out of a piece of brass, some washers, and then the 440 screw, and that then just screws on just like that. And what this does is that holds that wing in there very nicely, very securely. And now it's keeping it off of that edge. I'll just keep the paper towel in there while I'm working on it. But that now gives it a very nice, smooth motion of the wing. Not too loose, it's not going to flop around, and not so tight that it's hard to move. And that actually, that's kind of the perfect thing for that. Now, I'm repositioning the switches here, so they will be like this. And then I recut the holes in that top plate. We'll see that here in just a little bit. But before I do that, because once I do that, that's going to cover up all the wiring. So before I do that, let me just show you the wiring again, now that the wiring is all done. And let me see if I can zoom into this a little bit so we can see that better. All right, so again, I have 2 button cell batteries and a battery holder. That gold is just capped on tape because that will give me something to pull on to pull the batteries out when I have to replace them. That zip tie is really not needed because they're really tight in there. Again, that's why I put the capped on tape around it, so I can just pull them out. It'll give me something to pull them out better. But right here I have the positive, and I have a wire coming along to a solder pad here. On the other side I have the negative. That wire comes along to a solder pad here. Now all of the LEDs, again there's 6 of them, all of the LEDs, the cathode gets routed down here to that negative pad. And then I have 2 anodes here from the spotlight LEDs up here. Those go to the pad here. And then the 4 for the wing landing light LEDs ones, those go to a pad here. And then we have a switch, and that's going to connect the positive to the landing lights, and another switch that connects the positive to the spotlights. And that's all the wiring. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. And so now if we turn the switches on, we can see there are the 2 spotlight ones, and there are the 4 landing light ones, 2 on each side there. So the next thing, I'm going to mount those switches there. Those will now go through the holes here, and I'll just make some decorative something or other to block those holes right there. Now, as far as the lenses go over, over the lights, I just started playing around making one of the landing light lenses, and that's just out of a piece of clear plastic that I cut and bent to shape, and that will get bonded on right there. And I'm not going to do that just yet. I'll save that for later. I don't know if you can really see that very well right there. But I'll bond those on later. And I'm going to use, this is my favorite thing for bonding on clear lenses, because it dries clear, or it cures clear, and you've got like as much working time as you possibly need, because it won't set until you put the UV light on it. So you can take your time with it, getting it positioned just right, and then put the light on it and it sets. And this stuff actually bonds to clear plastic very, very well. I've had nothing but good luck with that stuff. And if you make a mess, you can easily just wipe it off. A paper towel dampened with alcohol will easily wipe it off any excess. So I will put the lenses in later. Now I will add into the CAD. Now I'll 3D print the lenses for here. I actually want to use like a translucent blue. I think that would look okay for those. I don't have any of the lenses in the file yet. I will get those in soon. I hope sooner than later. And it's just a matter of me getting to the computer and doing it. I don't really have a good excuse for not having that done yet. I did have to cut out that corner of the wing here so it would clear the battery holder here. So anyways, like I said, let me get these switches mounted for good, and then we'll continue with the assembly. All right, I kind of screwed up the audio, but so I'll just do a voiceover here. Just showing that cover going on. You notice the area that's in silver. That's actually rub and buff. I didn't want to paint that area, and you can see the lights working with the new switch location. Works out much better there. But I didn't want to paint that area right there because I was afraid it might bind up or paint or scratch off or whatever. And the rub and buff is actually a wax. And I was hoping that that would help the sliding pieces, which is coming up next. And that's just where the arm shoulder joints are. And I just coated all of those in rub and buff as well. And again, I didn't want to paint those because I didn't want the paint to bind anything up. And I'm also thinking that, you know, on the real thing, those would be, you know, a pretty heftily machined piece of metal. And something space-aged like aluminum or unobtainium, and I really kind of wanted those to look metalish, you know. So again, the rub and buff is kind of multi-purpose there, make them look kind of metally and keep them from binding from paint and help everything just slide together better. And here you can just see them sliding in and out, and that's for the different transformations between jet to robot. And nice good slight fit, nice good snapping action there. Those will require quite a bit of sanding to get those to fit. So, you know, everything prints a little bit tight, a little bit big, so you'll just need some filing and sanding. Those pieces there, I never drew those out, never printed them. They just fill in the back side. I just painted the back of mine with like a dark green, kind of to imitate like a primer. And I think that actually looks pretty good. I'm not going to bother with those inside pieces. And just starting to assemble them. But we need these, well, the wings are done. We need these little clip things. And in the kit, those are metal. And I showed those to you earlier. And in a previous video, I showed how they were kind of loose, where they fit in where I'm about to put them now. And somebody commented and said I could put heat shrink on the little posts that kind of stick out in there, and I thought that was a good idea at first, but then I'm thinking I probably want those a little bit loose, just so when you're doing the transformations, it doesn't bind anything up. So I'm thinking I want a little bit of looseness in those joints. You know, some joints you want tight, some joints you want loose. If they end up being too loose, then I can always just pull these screws out and put some heat shrink on those areas to tighten them up a little bit, but I think they'll be fine. And we're just screwing it back together here. Alright, so next up, there's this little circle plate thing there, and that just covers up that one screw. And I decided to just screw it on, just one little screw right in the middle, and I found that little really skinny flathead Phillips screw, and that just works well for screwing that thing on. I was thinking about maybe double stick tape or something, but I didn't want that to kind of come loose and cause problems later. So that just gets screwed down just like that. And just getting the next pieces. We'll see those here in a bit. And I got those already painted. And as we'll see here in a few minutes, I kind of painted too much and I'll have to sand some off. But those are the next parts. And they just go on the other end of the little flippy link hinge piece that we just kind of put in. And you can just kind of tell from from the instructions there and how I'm holding them there, how they go. Now those ends fit pretty well. I mean, they're still loose enough to turn, but they're not as sloppy as the other end is. But again, once it's all together, I think it moves pretty okay. But as I said, I need to sand off some of that paint so the solvent will stick. And I'm just using 50 grit sandpaper to remove the unwanted paint, and then using the solvent. And again, for large areas like that, it's just a little eyedropper thing that I'm going to use here in just a second, because that brush is really only good for small parts. So just kind of squirting it on there, which is probably more than enough, but I want to make sure that these parts never separate or come apart again. And just putting that in place, making sure everything's lined up properly. And we'll put a clamp on it here just to hold that in place. This solvent actually doesn't take long to take hold. I mean, you just squeeze it together for a couple of seconds and it's pretty much held. Now it'll still be a little bit soft, so you could pry it apart with enough force, but I just like to keep it clamped for several hours just to let all of the solvents evaporate out and let the plastic resolidify, and after that you're never going to get those parts apart again. So here's the second one that goes on, and that red that you see is just that filler material, leftover filler material, but which the solvent doesn't really work on, but there's plenty of plastic left that'll allow that to bond together. And we'll clamp it and just let that set for a few hours. And next up are those pieces that we assembled earlier, and I went ahead and painted them, and I just shot them with that green. Real aircraft use it's a zinc chromate primer, which is kind of a dark greenish color. That's a little bit darker than that, but it'll work. And I just painted the lines kind of a silver color, put a few other little colors in there, a few little highlights, just taking some artistic license with it. And I have to file that slot out just a little bit to get them to fit. Again, it is tight, but again, for something like this needs to be a nice slide fit. This allows the forward fuselage half to slide fore and aft when you're transforming it. So those have to be able to slide in there and move back and forth nicely without a lot of slop, you know, just a nice friction fit. So you will need some filing and sanding in that area. And the posts that go downwards, actually up, because that's an upside down view right now. But those posts that are pointing down in this view actually go into the fuselage half, the forward top fuselage half. And I didn't get the spacing quite perfect. You might have to elongate those holes just a little bit. I just used the X-Acto blade on the inside, or the inboard areas, I should say. And then on the post sticking down, I just filed, again, the inboard sides a little bit because those things were spaced out a little bit too far. Now, it didn't take much. It wasn't bad enough to have to redesign or reprint anything. As you can see here, it slides right in, and it just took a little bit of work to do that. And again, that whole assembly will be able to slide in and out for the, like I said, for the transforming feature. So I'm just going to pop that piece back off, and yeah, I'm just showing test fitting the legs, just kind of showing how those go on. But again, just using some, yeah, there's the other leg. Got to show both legs. I still need some work on those legs. There's a little bit of touch up and paint touch up on those legs I got to do, but just test fitting to make sure those go on okay. And just making sure those are straight, because when you bond these in, you want those to be as parallel to each other, perpendicular to where the legs mount on. And then just popping that piece off and using the solvent, and again with the little eyedropper, I'll put quite a bit of solvent in those openings and those holes there, because those are the only attachment points to the whole model. So those will then bond on to those slidey bits sticking out of the bottom. And again, I'll just double check for square and straightness, and I will just let that sit for several hours. I don't want to start sliding it back and forth or testing things until that's fully set, because I don't want anything to twist or move on me. So I'm just going to let that sit there for a while. And of course, you know, a little bit more. And just thought I would show how that looks when it's folded up. So that's in the robot mode right there. So that becomes kind of his front area. And so just kind of showing how that folds up there. Now that it's flipped over, we can see for the first time the top view of it, what it looks like. And it's kind of folded up into position. Now it's slid back. It's a little bit tight. Right in those areas there, right there. I'm going to have to do a little bit of sanding and filing in there, so that'll slide all the way aft, but that shouldn't be too difficult, just to clean that up a little bit. It actually fit before I painted it and everything, so it's probably just the thickness of the paint, maybe. We'll see. But next up we're ready to start on the head and the little rockets on the bottom of the wings, which those are going to be a pain in the butt because there's a lot of them and there's a lot of stuff to sand smooth. And of course his main weapon, and then we get into the nose and the cockpit and the nose gear leg. So all that's coming up, and this thing is getting there. It's almost done. So I'm kind of excited to see how it's how it's going to look when it's all done. So I had to trim off those tabs a little bit because they were actually hitting the wing pivot inside there. Either I made the wing pivots too big or I made them too far forward. Not quite sure, but I had to trim those off, had to sand that down quite a bit, and now it slides all the way back. So now it fits pretty well. So I'm pretty happy with that fit there. And I couldn't help but put the cockpit section in. I'm still in the process of sanding and filling and making that all smooth, but I just had to see what it looked like with the nose on it, so we can kind of get a view of what it looks like almost done. Now that circle on the wing right there, that didn't turn out very well. That, remember the wing was in two parts, and the split in the wing went right through that circle. So half of the circle is drawn on the outboard half, the other half of the circle drawn on the inboard half, and somehow, not sure why, but somehow one half of the circle was bigger diameter than the other half of the circle. So on mine, I had to fill in the smaller half and rescribe in the circle. And I'll paint in the logo. There's like the little logo that goes there. I'll paint that in later when I do the detailing. What I will have to do is fix the STL file and reload a new fixed STL file onto Thingiverse, so you won't have to fix a circle like I did. So if you haven't printed that part yet, wait till the new one is out. If you have printed it, you can either print the new one or just fix it like I did. But that's all for now. I'm going to leave it here because I think the video is getting way too long. Here's just, again, another kind of final shot of it. And as always, until next time, thanks for watching.